Good morning, First Presbyterian. I'm Matt Wilding. I'm a member here at First Presbyterian, and I'm joined by Dave Greve, my colleague and friend. Dave, welcome to First Presbyterian Insight class.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here in my house, but it's a pleasure to join you.
I'm really looking forward to our getting to host you sometime physically, not just virtually. I'm going to bring some slides in, I think.
So Matt and I both work together, or we've worked together at Collins for, I don't know what, I've been there for like 30 years. How long have you been there?
I've been there for 24 years, which is unbelievable.
So we've worked together for a long time. And I have to say that this subject that we're going to be talking about today is very interesting to me. It's an area that's at least on the periphery of a lot of things that both of us have been working on for a long time. And it's been very exciting to see really the explosion and the proliferation of this technology today.
Right. The original plan was for us each to give an hour-long presentation on this topic. Dave and I talked about it and decided that maybe that wasn't the thing to do, given the pre-recording nature of this, that maybe we should shorten it.
Yeah, an hour is a long time to be staring at a computer.
Yes, it is. And also that maybe we should do it together, because even though we don't get the vitality associated with people asking questions and going back and forth, at least we can go back and forth between the two of us, and maybe that'll help by addressing this topic.
Well, Matt makes a good straight man.
That too. We imagine that this presentation will be actually covering two classes. Today we'll focus more on what artificial intelligence is today, and then next Sunday in the second class we'll focus more about what artificial intelligence is going to be tomorrow, or at least where the directions that it seems to be going in. And in this class we'll talk about what artificial intelligence is, and then talk about a bunch of examples of how it's used.
That's going to be really challenging, I think, because I don't know that there's a really well-established definition for what exactly artificial intelligence is. So I think part of what we'll be doing is trying to outline the area a little bit, and there's a lot of technologies that fall into various places within that larger spectrum, but there's really no one definition of artificial intelligence that everyone accepts.
Very good. So fortunately, even if there's not well-established definitions for everything, we do have Wikipedia. And so we're able to at least start by defining a few things. Of course, the word computer is used very often. It's a machine that can be instructed to carry out sequences of arithmetic and logical operations automatically via computer programming. And we highlighted the word instructed because that's very much what a computer does traditionally, is it follows a set of directions.
So, I mean, computers, that technology has been around for a long time. In fact, fun fact, right? The original definition of computer actually referred to people. It was people who did computational mathematics. So they would take numbers and they would plug them into formulas and they would get answers. And those people who did that job were called computers. And a number of those people worked for NASA, and they were instrumental in some of the early space flight. And so there's a really great movie, Hidden Figures, that talks about a group of women. Most of the computers early on were women, and the sort of the history of how these women influenced the space program at that time. But now, of course, computer means something completely different, and it's pervasive. Right? I mean, computers are everywhere.
Yeah.
Your car, your phone, your microwave. There's probably no aspect of your life that's not influenced by computers at some level.
Right. A robot is a machine, especially one that's programmable by a computer, that's capable of carrying out a complex series of actions automatically. Again, a pretty common parlance to use the word robot. I think anybody that's seen a science fiction movie probably has encountered a robot before, but that's what that means. Again, it's not so much getting detailed instructions, but it's doing things a bit more automatically.
Right.
It's a
And I think when you talk about AI, this is a common image that emerges, right? When people think of AI, they think of a robot. They think of something that maybe looks like a human, or at least moves and acts in some way independent in the physical world. And so it's not irrelevant to talk about robots in this context. A lot of people have like a Roomba today that cleans their floor. A Roomba is like is a robot. It doesn't look like a person necessarily, but AI does have an influence on this. And in most science fiction type movies, the robots are inhabited by some form of AI that makes them act like humans, or maybe even superhumans.
So I guess that would be really sort of the distinction between artificial intelligence and a computer then, Dave, would be instructing versus learning.
Right. So the AI, the definition that we have here is the capability of a computer to perform operations analogous to learning and decision-making in humans, right? And so the idea is, whereas a computer is simply told what to do, artificial intelligence has the ability to adapt and to change and to learn from its environment and from its experience to perform better sort of in the future. If you see The Incredibles, the AI robot in The Incredibles is a learning robot and gets harder and harder to defeat as the movie goes on. And that's a characteristic, I would say, of AI type systems.
Right. One thing that people say sometimes about artificial intelligence is that once a problem has been solved, it suddenly makes people start thinking that it's not artificial intelligence anymore. It's more just a computer.
It's what computers do, right?
That's right. So chess playing programs, for example, were thought of as artificial intelligence 20, 30 years ago. And as they got better and better and people understood better and better how to make them work, they seemed less and less human and less about learning, to the point where they said, this isn't artificial intelligence. This is just using computers.
Yeah.
So that's a characteristic of this field of artificial intelligence, is that they tend to evolve into things that people don't think of as learning anymore.
Yeah, even in our jobs, the tools that Matt and I frequently use, historically were thought of as AI type tools. They're tools that do analysis of other programs. But nowadays, we really don't think of them that way. They're just tools to help us do our job.
And then artificial general intelligence is the ability not just to do a particular thing or learn in a particular domain, but to perform any tasks that a human can perform. And that's obviously broader than just
a lot of the AI that we'll talk about today performs a very specific task. And if you were to ask it to do some other task, it would be completely inept. But the goal, I think, in some ways, of the artificial intelligence research, they're looking at how do we emulate human behavior, for better or worse. Whether that's a laudable goal or not, I'm not sure. But humans do encapsulate certain intelligence and a general intelligence. We're able to adapt to new situations. We're able to learn from our mistakes, regardless of the task or the situation. And that's something that's not seen a lot in the current technologies, the ones that we'll be mainly focused on today.
Right.
So this is a little chart that we put together that kind of compares and contrasts computers, humans, and artificial intelligence, the artificial AI in the middle, for various tasks. And so the first three tasks: recall, precision, and performance. Recall is the ability to remember things. Precision is the ability to do something well over and over again. And performance is the ability to do it fast. And these are things that humans, quite frankly, are very, very bad at. I mean, we can remember a few things, but we're very forgetful. We make a lot of mistakes, so we're not precise. And frankly, as computing goes, we're very, very slow. And so computers, it turns out, are very good at all three of these tasks. They can remember things exactly. They don't make mistakes unless you've told them to make mistakes because you program them incorrectly. And they're very, very fast. And so we've seen over the generations, Moore's law, the exponential improvement in computer performance and speed over time. But as we kind of move down the chart, we begin to see things that computers aren't quite as good at, like patterns and predictions or playing games. They were pretty good. And for a long time, there was sort of a competition between humans and computers to see who's better at these sorts of things. And humans are pretty good at these things. At this point, so I've colored humans yellow here, I would say that the machines are beginning to win, but that's largely because of AI. So AI is very strong in these areas. AI is fast like a computer, but it's good at identifying patterns and making predictions. And it turns out it's really good at games. Chess was a major breakthrough a few years ago. People weren't sure whether computers would ever be smart or fast enough to beat humans in chess. And Garry Kasparov played against the computer, and eventually the computers won. There are other games beyond chess that are less familiar to an English audience anyway, the game of Go. And it was really thought that that humans would always win at Go, that computers would never beat them. And this last year, a product from Google, Alpha, I think it's I can't remember the name of the program. I think it's Alpha, beat a human at Go. And this was earth-shattering. But there's still things that AI and computers aren't
Earth-shattering to Go players.
What's that? Yeah, to Go players. But there's plenty of areas where humans are still quite a bit better than both computers and AI. Of course, we're good at making mistakes and fooling people. Although AI is getting better at that. There's now AI poker programs, for instance, that can bluff and can beat people at that game. Adaptability and understanding and inspiration, these things really still live, the humans really still have an advantage in this field. So this is where we're at, but AI, again, is filling in the gap between traditional computing and human computing, our ability to reason. And frankly, it's making progress very quickly. So there's a question, how far can it go? How far can it impinge on things that humans are good at and replace us in the process?
I think you should talk about the three laws as well, Dave.
Yeah, so this has been a thing. So people have been thinking about this for a long time, right? I mean, all the way back into the 50s and before, at the very dawn of the computer era, people started thinking about, well, can we make machines that are like humans? And if we do that, what kind of an impact is that going to have on us, our society, and how will we interact with them, and what are the rules? And so around this time, a science fiction author, Asimov, came up with the 3 laws of robotics. So a robot can't injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Right? So these are rules in place that Asimov had in place to protect humanity from its creation, from the AI. So Asimov wrote a number of stories, and these were sort of the foundation for them. But ultimately, as the little clip at the bottom says, while these laws sound plausible, they sound reasonable, there's numerous arguments for why they're really inadequate. They aren't going to do what you hope they're going to do. And even Asimov's own stories argue that these laws aren't enough. And so, this problem of how do we control our creation? How do we make sure that it's for the benefit of mankind and not to our detriment? This is an ongoing problem, and we're going to see some of that even in the examples we'll look at today.
Right. Right. So 1984 was the year that I graduated from college. So it was a long time ago, but not incredibly long ago. And it was also the year that that Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie, The Terminator, came out.
Arnold.
Yes, I mentioned this before. Artificial intelligence in movies, especially some years ago, never goes well.
No.
And this is a good example of it. We have a highly intelligent killer, and just not going well. But back in 1984, it was very much, artificial intelligence was the future. It was science fiction.
It was science fiction. Yes.
It was it was sometime in the future, there's going to be the creation of intelligent, autonomous acting systems. And of course, because it's movies, usually it goes very badly, but the point is that it wasn't present day technology, it was future technology. But now, as we look at today, it's a very much of a different story.
Hey, there's Arnold in a suit.
That's right.
It's Governor Arnold.
It's a completely different situation.
He seems very safe, Matt.
He does seem safe in this picture, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And just sort of just a regular kind of guy.
Just a regular Joe. You might not even notice him walking down the street.
Right. For example, when you
in the same way, you might not
open your cell phone in the morning, and you use face recognition to do it, or it decides that it needs to do two-factor authentication because it's the artificial intelligence has decided that something fishy is going on, wants to make sure it's you. You would be using this kind of artificial intelligence technology, just starting your phone. Or using social media. You've probably noticed that you use Facebook, and all of a sudden you're getting a bunch of ads that seem scarily like things you might be interested in, because there's artificial intelligence at work that's processing a lot of information about you, maybe your search queries, or maybe something about your background or posts that you look at on Facebook. It's deciding what it might be able to sell you, or it might be able to tell you what friends you might have that you should have. You send an email or get an email, and spam filters are making judgments about what's liable to be bad stuff that you don't want, or maybe it's sorting your email in a way that it thinks might be good for you. Search engines.
Matt, this technology doesn't sound scary at all.
Well, it is a little scary though when you think about it, because there's some very sophisticated stuff going on that is making judgments about you and the world that you don't necessarily have any control over, and it's largely hidden from you. You probably, when you're commuting to work, you're not thinking about this technology at work, or banking, some of these other examples. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's very pervasive now, this artificial intelligence technology, and it's at work all the time. It's not in the future; it's actually now that it's common.
It sounds like it's making our lives better.
In some ways, I think it is. I think in many ways it is. But probably, Dave, we should look at a couple of examples in a little more detail.
All right, let's do that.
Here's an example. I went on a business trip before COVID, and didn't have a car, so I was taking Ubers all over the place. And several times I got picked up by a Tesla. This was in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of traffic. And Tesla gets on the highway, and I noticed that my driver is literally driving the car, not really paying attention. He has one finger on the wheel. And I realized, having only been in a Tesla a few times, that what was happening was that the car was driving itself. And he was using that one finger to keep the car from stopping itself because it needs to have a driver. That's one of the rules, is that there be a driver there. So it can tell that because somebody has their hand or a finger on the wheel. And I will say, if you've been in a car like this, it works really well, especially in constrained situations like being on a highway, like we were in this picture. This is a picture that I took, and I asked the driver, who was a very friendly guy, hey, I want to show people that actually we're driving in a car that that's driving itself. So would you mind taking your finger off the wheel? And he said, sure. So he took his finger off the wheel, and maybe he wasn't supposed to do that, and he put his finger back on. But it was it seems to work pretty well. The question, Dave, is the car intelligent?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? You know, a lot of times, you know, when I'm driving down the highway at night, I can think about a lot of things, and I really don't have to think about driving at all. I mean, to me, it seems very easy to drive a car under those circumstances. But I think when you go to actually program, if you were to write a computer program to try to drive the car for you, then that suddenly becomes a very different issue, because while maybe it's easy to drive on the highway, there's lots of situations that can come up that can be very dangerous, right? So something comes in front of you, or you have a stop sign, or it's snowing outside, right? So there's lots of factors that contribute. And so driving sometimes seems easy and sometimes not so easy at all. So I think, yeah, really, this is an example of intelligence here. Now, of course, if you ask this to make eggs for you in the morning, it's probably not going to do that, or keep your soda cold, right? It's very focused on one task, so it's not really general intelligence. But I think the technology required to drive a car does reflect a type of technology or a type of intelligence.
Yep. I think you're right about that. Ethical considerations. There's documented cases of self-driving cars hurting or killing people. On the other hand, there's of course many more cases where human-driven cars are killing people by accident. It's an ethical consideration whether this is a good technology or not, but it seems like it boils down to the question: is the car driving itself better at driving than a human driving a car? And that's a hard thing to determine, but if you believe that that's true, it feels like this is an ethical kind of thing to be doing.
Yeah, as you know, despite the fact that I work in a technology center, in a technology company, I'm kind of an anti-technology guy. I haven't had a smartphone I had a flip phone for a long time after I finally got a phone. And the idea of a self-driving car bothered me for a long time. But when I look around today and I see all these people driving with their cell phones, they're distracted. They're not paying attention, right? And this is causing a lot of problems. And so I look at this technology today and I say, this can't happen fast enough. I really believe that some form of self-driving technology is in fact safer and ultimately better for us than what humans are capable of doing behind the wheel.
Yeah. Here's another example of automatic language translation. If you haven't experienced this, you ought to, because it's amazing. Just on your phone, you can get a free app that translates from pretty much any language to pretty much any other language. The technology has been many years in the making. For many years, scientists tried to understand language, and they would take language and they would figure out what a verb was, what a noun was. It was a tremendous intellectual effort to try to automate the process of language understanding. And if you think of a phrase like uh, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. You begin to understand how hard it is to go through this process and figure out what means what. But then some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, a new technology came to the fore, which was doing language translation and understanding based on search. So it was actually pioneered by Google. And what they did is, instead of really trying to process the language and figure out what the sentence structure was, et cetera, they would use huge stores of data. And when they would try to translate a phrase in one language, they would try to find that phrase in multiple places and find previous translations of that phrase, and then do some processing to figure out how to make it work for the current example.
So they were using the internet as a giant Rosetta Stone, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. And that technology was better than the technology that had been worked on for years. So, and it completely revolutionized this part of the field. And now the translation technology is pervasive and really pretty good. And we get to the same question again: is a translator intelligent? That's, again, Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, this is right. You know, when you think back to the early days of language understanding and translation, that was really the focus, right? They wanted a way for the computer to understand what it was working with so that it could make an accurate translation. And all that's gone out the window here, right? There is really no understanding here. It's just a search. But at the same time, it kind of has the appearance of intelligence, right? I mean, if you're using these tools, they sure seem smart. They're much better at translating than I am, and they're useful. So, you know, if you're in a foreign country and you're dealing with somebody who speaks a different language, it's very convenient to be able to do this quickly without searching through a little dictionary or something and then mispronouncing something.
Yep.
So I think, you know, it certainly has the appearance of intelligence, and I think it would fool most people into thinking it was intelligent.
Yep. I think that's fair. I think it acts like it's intelligent, so you almost have to call it intelligent. I would say that it seems to work not quite as well as people are able to do. It's not as subtle in terms of doing translations.
Right.
And of course, it is not restricted the way people are to just a handful of languages. Any one person can only speak a few languages. And also, it can do virtually all of literature, for example,
Right.
as opposed to a person who can only do maybe a few pages in a day.
And it can, yeah, and it can do it rapidly. And if it makes mistakes, you can train it to not make those mistakes. So it keeps getting better too.
Right.
And so, right, I mean, 5, 10, 20 years from now, for sure, I would not be at all surprised that we're able to have fluent conversations with people from with different language backgrounds, and to be able to exchange emails and other forms of communication with them seamlessly. Yeah. I absolutely believe that that's possible.
We're trying to keep this to a half hour, and we're getting close to that limit, but maybe real quickly, maybe mention ethical considerations in this technology.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's been a lot of work in this area, but one of the issues that has cropped up is with what they call chatbots. So these are little agents that interface with you on the internet, maybe for entertainment, maybe for business purposes. But at one point, Microsoft had trained a chatbot to learn language and to be able to converse. And they trained it off of the internet, right? And so it learned how to talk, how to communicate from the internet. And then they turned it loose. They opened up the channels and people started talking to it. And what they found was that it was profane, it was rude. And these are all the sorts of things that people are on the internet, right? So it sort of, in a way, under certain circumstances at least, sort of reflected the worst of human behavior back to its creators. Is that an ethical issue? Well, I don't know, but they pulled this, right? It certainly gave them a black eye for this technology, and they've since improved it. But maybe those are the sorts of things you might need to worry about. How you train this and how you use it. It does have potential ramifications when people actually go to use it. And sometimes they're very unintended.
Yep. Maybe just real fast, we could talk about deep fakes.
Yeah, so this is new. This is a huge technology that came on the scene a couple of years ago. It's basically the ability to take an image and to project that image onto like a video, for instance. And so here we have a graphic with an example with Mona Lisa. And we have 3 characters on the left that are animated, that are talking, that are having a conversation. As you look at it, you think, well, that's Mona Lisa talking, right? The technology is amazing, the ability to do this. And this is all enabled by AI. Now, when we start talking about, is this intelligent? I don't know, but again, a very powerful tool for people who are trying to do this. For instance, in one of the most recent Star Wars movies, we got to see Princess Leia as a young girl again, even though the actress who had played her had passed away. They were able to sort of reanimate her for this movie. And so that you can see that there's a lot of potential here to do really interesting and creative things. But I think the
ethical considerations is a huge thing. If a picture or a video can be faked in a way that literally you cannot tell it apart from reality,
right?
Even an expert can't tell that that person did not do that thing that you can see on the video. That's going to be not so good with police cams and political speech, and there's a really kind of a scary future.
Yeah, I mean, our society is at the point right now, at least, or maybe a few years ago, at least, where we considered, a photograph or a video as ground truth, right? This actually happened. Now, of course, there's been image faking type programs around for a while where you could mess with a picture or something like that, but we've never seen this at this level for videos, and so this could revolutionize in sort of a bad way, the underpinnings of a lot of our like judicial or how would you say it, just political process, right? The way people see other people, if they see them performing, acts that are, bad or out of character, that can have a real impact on their reputation, even though these things are just completely manufactured out of thin air by some guy on the internet. So I think the ethical considerations of this technology are huge.
Yep.
And clearly, as Matt was alluding to, this is much better than a human could ever do. Or more to the point, it would take Lucasfilms millions of dollars and years to produce videos of this quality without this sort of AI technology behind it.
Yep. Dave, I think that wraps up our first class.
Yeah, well, this has been very interesting. There's just so much going on today that was, like you said, science fiction in 1984, and so it was really interesting to hear about all these examples and kind of to kind of benchmark where we are right now. Looking ahead to next week, our plan is to kind of look at, well, where can this technology go? We've seen some pretty amazing things today. Are there limits to this? What can we expect as we look forward to as this technology evolves? So I'm very excited about our second installment for this. In the meantime, I would ask you to subscribe to our channel and to please to click on the bell icon to indicate that you like this content.
Dave, we don't have the Dave and Matt AI channel quite yet.
I thought you said we were going to monetize this, like supported through advertising and stuff on the web.
No, sorry.
I've already made some down payments on some jet skis. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up right there.
All right.
Dave, thanks a lot, and I really enjoyed it too. And we'll talk next Sunday as well. And people at First Presbyterian, we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you, Matt. I look forward to seeing you next week too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.